Nobody ever crawled out of bed saying, "Today is the day I'm going to make lots of mistakes. Yay!" So we all know that the idea of screwing something up is terrifying. And in this social media minefield era, when everything one says can potentially be twisted or used as revenge, one little mistake could erase everything a person has worked for. Maybe you've seen it happen online. Old tweets, awkwardly worded statements, or a misguided error or flub gets a person branded as problematic, never to be trusted again, or even canceled. I've been semi-canceled in my own life. When I worked for a feminist movement organization, I was considered a traitor because I had to make nice with the sometimes racially inept white women donors. My colleagues gave me side-eye for tolerating these women and their malapropisms. And when I reminded them that we needed to be bringing in legal U.S. tender and not righteous bucks, they disliked me even more. And so soon, I was out on my butt with no job and a major career setback. I even remember when I was a little girl, I was teased and ostracized because I couldn't turn the double Dutch rope correctly. My left hand just won't do it. Or because I spoke like a white girl. So I am here to remind us that being othered, ostracized, teased, bullied, or canceled is a spectrum, right? From teasing and bullying to being met with extreme defensiveness and pushed out. Sometimes it's just a sucky outcome of other people's fears and insecurities. But also there are, let's be clear, instances where bad actions do require some kind of response. There is a line between accountability and public shaming. And when we can have clarity about that demarcation point, I think it helps give a lot of us who have positional power the courage to use it instead of shy away into silence and inaction. And so this is a team sport. On one side, it's about learning to interrogate and correct bad default behavior. And on the other side, it's about using the calling in mechanism rather than writing someone off entirely. At least give them 3 strikes, right? So let's get honest, right? Movements for justice don't work unless people are held responsible for their words and actions. That is for sure. But there's a powerful difference between accountability, where you're taught, you apologize, you do better, and punishment purely for public spectacle or revenge, right? Real progress means believing that growth is possible, that mistakes can be seeds for learning, not fields to sow with salt. So when we barrel straight on into erasure or calling out or banning the offender to the hinterlands of our movements, with no room for nuance, remorse, humanity, or growth, we become engaged in a short-term feel-good, maybe, but it's certainly a long-term lose. We lose would-be collaborators, especially those who live and operate in territories we don't want to personally be part of. I'm talking about the white allies who have to be on the front line with the haters, right? But worse, we blow our chance, I think, to truly live in our values. By shutting others out, we're not building the convening world that we dream of. I mean, look, no society is going to be filled with people who feel, think, and act exactly a 100% DNA match with us, right? That's called a bubble. You can have your bubble if that makes you happy, but I believe if we want to shift the world, we have to be broader in our inclusion. And if you're feeling annoyed by what I'm saying here, let's just take a historical lens and look at some of the great leaders, artists, and change agents who weren't perfect saints, who stumbled and flubbed, but got back up on the proverbial horse. These women grew, sometimes publicly, painfully, sometimes with dirty hands, but open hearts. Mariamba Ba of Senegal used her early fiction to critique polygamy and women's roles, but through feedback and her own personal growth, Her later activism grew more intersectional, addressing race, class, and tradition with greater compassion than she might have had in her earlier life. Or Rose Lokosim in Chad, a resistance fighter who was at first determined to fight fire with fire, and she experienced quite a bit of suffering. Her prison letters show profound change, less rage, more longing for reconciliation and truth. I have been in places where people who let go of the rage get really, really, dissed by those who want to hold it on. Or in the U.S., Jovita Idar, the Mexican-American journalist in Texas, who also shifted her approach over the years. At the beginning, she wrote fiery testimonials, and she actually stood in front of her building to stop the Texas Rangers from shutting down her printing press. Over time, she moved from confrontational activism to quieter work as a nurse and educator, which showed that she had compassion for building schools, mutual aid groups, and coalitions that held a commitment to healing her community. And some people would say that's a sellout, but others need to look at it from a different lens, because I think what it shows that growth and change of perspective and approach is something we can think of too as future legends, right? So in our own humanity, how are we going to be open to growing, shifting, resetting, and maybe forgiving ourselves as well as others? Now, I'm not saying that everything should be forgiven. That's ridiculous. But sometimes we can find space for redemption, community healing, and new understanding. And I guess that's why I'm a fan of the method of calling in rather than calling out. Civil rights and reproductive justice activist Loretta J. Ross is the person who helped me incorporate this mentality into my body of work. In her many talks, courses, and 2025 book, Calling In, How to Start Making Change with Those You'd Rather Cancel, she draws on decades of personal experience deprogramming white supremacists, working with incarcerated men, and organizing movements. And she shows us how calling in can be a radical trauma-aware practice. I highly recommend this book. Calling in takes courage. It means inviting people to listen, learn, make repair, and try again. But I think this is how movements live and thrive, especially in this moment of so much strife. The world doesn't need more purity tests. What we need are circles that are wide enough for error, mending, and comeback stories. I think if we only look to punish and push people out, bad things go down, right? People stop taking risks because they're afraid of being wrong. Privilege stays unexamined because mistakes are pushed under the rug instead of owned. Communities and movements lose collaborative voices that could be leveraged and powerful. Maybe they just need a little honest feedback and tweaking, to get right in the sweet spot. I'm not saying everyone is entitled to full forgiveness, but if we look at the world and analyze things from a less binary and less knee-jerk way, I think growth and bettering can be one of the things we admit into our circles. I know there are people who believed in me when I fell short, so I am a fan of at least trying this out with others, because no justice movement has ever been built by perfect people in perfect circles or bubbles. The women I mentioned this week and countless others remind me and us that progress means making room for growth. So I invite you to think about when you might be able to give a work in progress person the dignity of a path forward, not just a locked door.